Won't be anybody. That was kind of nice. That kind of was a reminder.
Yeah.
I'd like to have that voice changed to a male voice.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, I'll call a meeting to order. We need to approve the agenda, not as printed. We have to delete items 6 and 7. John said he just does it.
Yeah, unfortunately, finance is running a little bit behind with their 2021 financials, so I don't have a final report to even provide, and I don't have a bottom line for our retained earnings. So
we'll have to wait for that. So with those changes, need the motion to approve. So second. And second, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, that has carried. Public comment on agenda items.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tom Borchert.
Yeah, your name is already up there.
Oh, okay. I can't get my camera to work, so I didn't comb my hair this morning, but
our security camera caught right away your name.
I got one quick question for Kathy. I see that Hefty EcoSave molded fiber plates are being sold now. Do we know about those? John?
Kathy's not here.
No. It says they're 100% compostable
Yeah.
in industrial facilities.
Okay.
So my question is, my wife is asking me, do I throw them in the garbage or do I throw them in a recycling thing?
It'll be in the garbage, or you can compost them, but
you're not supposed to compost them. It says on there, it won't work in a compost pile in your backyard.
Okay, we'll have to look into what you're talking about.
Okay.
You know.
All right, and then John, sometime today, if you can give me a call, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
I really wanted to watch Doug eat my donut, but I can't see that far anyhow, so I'll have to let you guys get on with your meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Communication shared by solid waste board members that he was an ex-solid waste board member. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to discuss? No? Okay. Approve the minutes. June 15th, open session. So moved. Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of June 15th, open session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is okay. That is carried.
And who seconded that? I'm sorry.
I think Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, you're
No. Just the lines.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, yes. I make a motion that we move into closed session.
Oh no, you have to read.
You read the
whole- yeah.
Baron 1, Baron 2, all that.
If you don't think that's right, discuss it with corp counsel because I don't think it makes any sense. But
We can all read. That's okay. Pursuant to section 19.85 I Wisconsin statutes, at this point in the meeting, the board shall consider a motion to convene into closed session for the purposes of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, we will consult power agreement negotiation.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. We need a roll call vote.
All right, Ted.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Jim.
Yeah. Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Jerry.
Aye.
Doug.
Aye.
Howie.
Yes.
And Shanna. Yes. Aye.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. What's her name? Oh.
I don't know. I think it's solid waste owl. I haven't given it a good name.
Should be given a name. And that's not complicated. We could have a name the owl contest.
Yeah.
There you go. I think you have a good idea of what the motion should be.
Yeah, if it could be clarified a little bit, I'd like to make a motion that we pause to reevaluate the options that were discussed.
Renewable
For
energy.
for the sale of renewable attributes.
Yeah.
Sale of renewable attributes.
Is that clear enough?
Yes.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Making sure it's all. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion has carried.
Okay.
There's no other action to back that up.
Nope.
No, that's it.
No.
Yeah, and then let me just say this is Richard again. So I've shared with John the proposed contract with WPS. There's no like great urgency on that. So we can bring that contract separately back to the board, you know, for your next meeting if you want to act on that separately. You know, again, as we've said, none of the options that you're going to be considering that are ultimately going to show up on this matrix that we'll talk about in a moment, you know, preclude your ability to enter into this contract with WPS to renew the existing contract essentially with WPS. So what I'm saying is we can come back to that at your next meeting, get a contract in front of you so you're not just acting in the abstract, but actually, you know, having a contract presented to you for consideration.
And we'll do that at not the budget meeting, but a future meeting.
Okay.
Probably in September, I would say.
I have a question, and I'm having a little trouble understanding what good a contract is that either side can get out of whenever they want.
That's not a bad question. It gives you options. It's called flexibility. So as long as it's in your mutual interest, you know, the contract gives you a little bit of comfort and certainty, but it doesn't lock you into something in an environment where there are a lot of other options.
John, I think I remember a contract with, what was that? Remember they were gonna incinerate the energy place? We had a contract with them that was solid.
Sure. The gold nugget?
Until they decided, well, we're not gonna do this anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever, then we went to arbitration and it cost us $150,000 and whatever, and that's, I mean, that's both sides of that issue. You know, they walked and we had to chase.
Yeah.
Because they owe us money anyway, so that, you know, I like this option.
Sure.
I mean, the issue really is that WPS just, it really has to do with what's happening with the REC market and the parallel generation tariff. The fact of the matter is, back when I first looked at those contracts for you guys in the late 2000s, I think the contract we're currently under was renewed or was amended in the 2010 or 11 timeframe. They were really self-standing contracts. They were like power purchase agreements with renewable attributes. But now what we're talking about is really a contract that's under a tariff. It changes every year. And so WPS could lower the price that they're willing to pay for the electricity next year. And if you're locked into that contract, that's not a good thing, right? So it's because the market has changed for renewable energy. And so the kinds of contracts that WPS is willing to enter into has changed. So in that context, flexibility is a good thing from our standpoint.
Okay.
Complicated.
All right.
Okay.
Buzzword of the board.
Yeah. Oh,
There's another, may I make another motion?
Okay.
Based on legal counsel, Reineman, I'd make a motion to authorize Mr. Reineman to finalize the contract with WPS.
Well, I thought I just heard him say he didn't want to do that.
No, I did say that would make sense. What I said was, you don't have to act on that contract now, right? So that we'll come back at a later date and present the contract for you to decide whether you want to enter into it or not. But to get to that point, I think that's the purpose of this motion, is just to make sure that we've got a final contract for you guys to review. Does that make sense?
Okay, okay, thank you. That motion's been made. Need a second?
I guess I don't understand the motion. He's saying he's gonna come back to us in a month. And we make the motion to do it then. So, that's my understanding, is there's no rush to do it now. That's why I vote no on that if that comes up.
What I'm saying is that the motion just basically authorizes me to finalize the contract, as opposed to the motion saying, okay, we've reviewed the contract, we're comfortable with it, we want to sign it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now I need a second.
I'll second.
Second, okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Paul?
Well, I think you should keep the flexibility and defeat the motion.
Okay, that's fine. All in favor of that motion signified by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
That carried. Thank you.
Who are the names?
One. Oh.
Paul and Jim. Okay. Okay, so if we move on to agenda item 11. I guess Chris and Sarah have a PowerPoint that they'd like to walk you through. Probably the biggest thing in the first or second slide is there's going to have to be some additional dollars spent to evaluate.
Hang on, I appreciate the fact they did this. Why are we looking at this now? We just, in other words, I understand they're gonna evaluate for what we just saw, right? But if we're putting a pause in this, because we might go a completely different direction, isn't this better presented to us when we're looking at all of the options instead of looking at this now and then 3 months from now, looking at something else and we'll never remember what we just looked at now?
Well, I guess the first slide talks about some additional scope work and bringing in eco-engineers to help us evaluate the renewable side. So both part and eco-engineers is going to cost a little bit more that we don't have it budgeted. So I guess the first step is having the board authorize spending some additional dollars via both and eco-engineers to help us.
So this isn't just an evaluation of what we saw.
Right.
This is more than that.
It's more than that. Okay, Chris, Sarah, if you want to run through this PowerPoint and
sure.
Go from there.
So thanks. I guess yes. You can see the slides up on the screen.
Yep.
Okay, so what we're talking about is a supplemental task order, and we were asked to a while back review the Tetra Tech report already, and we have put some time into that already. But now we've incorporated some additional work based on the needs to help you guys make some decisions. You guys really, it's complicated, and you guys need to get it simplified enough to make good decisions. So what we've done is put together a scope of work here, review their report, apply the information. I think the information that Tetra Tech prepared does have value, so we can use that. Look at the gas flows and what we can utilize, prepare an economic options analysis and a summary memo, which here's that matrix that you're talking about. We're going to complete this in August. We have a budget of $26,700. if you want to, I'll show you, we've already done quite a bit of work and kind of give you a sense of, you know, what we've looked at or where we're at. So just on the peer review, when we looked at the report, one of the things we noticed is the landfill gas flow rates that they have projected are higher than what you have experienced in history or in your actuals. So we think we need to use suggest using some lower flow rates when you project this, especially when we start dealing with the cost centers. Also, I think we have concerns with the ability to consistently deliver landfill gas without contaminants. Your CNG and RNG systems, their biggest contaminant is air. And they have to use molecular sieves to remove nitrogen, oxygen. And so that's one of the things that the Sunnyview landfill struggles with is air intrusion. So we have to be aware of that. Also, we should consider making sure we have conservative conversion rates of the landfill gas to like CNG vehicle fuel, because you have limited storage and you have limited users. And that means that, you know, just because you have the gas available and the system to make the fuel doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it or get rid of all of that. So we should be aware of that. And then we suggested bringing an additional expert evaluation of a renewable or that energy value attribute using eco-engineers to supplement the current information. You can go to the next slide. So Sarah Biney, who's an engineer with Foth, is working on this, and she's going to present the rest of this presentation.
Great, thanks, Chris. So like was first bullet point, landfill gas generation, so how much gas you're producing and how much gas you're actually able to collect. Varies a lot by landfill. Those two lines get further apart the older the landfill gets. And what we wanted to do is make sure we understand what numbers are being assumed for like ROIs in the Tetra Tech report, and for, you know, your future of your generation. Are we going to keep using the engines for electricity, or is there something better to do? But what gas? How much gas will we have either way? So this figure here, we show the orange line of the gas that your landfill is actually generating. Now, this isn't in a vacuum. We can't collect it all. So the model predicts in this green line how much you can actually collect. So there's an assumption of a collection percentage you're able to get. But then in this third line, this blue line has been year over year, the amount of gas you've actually collected from your landfill. We can see this, even this green line, which is what, you know, we might expect, or ideally we would expect you to be able to collect with your system, has gotten farther and farther away from this actual blue line. So what do we think we can do for the future? That's where this gray line comes in. And John, Chris, and I had spent some time going over historical data, actual collection rates, and assumed a 10% reduction for the next few years, and then a 5% reduction, which kind of gets our curve, our gray line here, flattening out a bit, but still declining. So in Tetra Tech's report, they had to use, you know, an assumption for gas generation for the next few years. We have to use that in all of our negotiations and with these energy credits and everything too. But what is that number, and are we being conservative enough to actually meet return on investment for some of these options for what to do with gas? So I believe Tetra Tech used about 1,000 SCFM of gas flow, which is our numbers here on our y-axis, for their assumption for the future, for those ROIs of RNG, you know, the CNG vehicle use, those options they looked at. They had to pick an assumption. Now, when we're looking at this, and if we average the 10 years, I think we have 9 years of projection on this gray line, plus our, what we actually got in 2021, we're about half that. And that is conservative, but that makes a huge difference in how much money you can generate, how much electricity, how much gas, how much money you can make from generations. So with our analysis, in the task order that Chris presented, we are leaning towards using this more conservative estimate. Any questions on this chart at all?
Daryl, I'll just say one thing. Some of the information that was shown in the Tetra Tech presentation, was gas generation of, in the 700 to 1,000 CFM. Well, right now, today, we have a hard time supplying 650. If we try to draw more than 650 out of the hill, it suffers, oxygen goes up, methane quality goes down, and we have to shut off an engine to get it back to,
right.
So some of the numbers that were used in the Tetra Tech report just aren't realistic. And so what myself and Sarah and Chris tried to do is present something a little more on the conservative side, a little more realistic for gas generation for the next 10 years.
Okay, and to clarify, this is gas generation. It's got nothing to do with the fact that our engines have been down and converting the gas to electricity. That's got nothing to do with that. Okay, this is the actual gas. Okay, yeah.
My only question then would be, how did Tetra Tech come up and present that number? I mean, that's why we had folk look over these numbers, and obviously there's a dramatic difference.
Right.
My assumption is because they sold.
Well, they were provided with information last fall. Okay, so they took the information that we had available to them last fall. Whole lot of information that both provided to them related to tonnages and types of waste, and Tetra Tech essentially ran their own models to come up with their projections, and I think they were maybe over projecting what we actually are seeing right now. So
yes,
I don't want to get into something where we say we base something on 700 CFM when we're only going to be producing 500 CFM, because that's a big difference. And that totally changes the economics of it, as Sarah was mentioning. So
right, in the end, if you produce a little more, it's a bonus.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
I would just say, I'll just say, as engineers, we have to make assumptions. We let everybody know the assumptions that we make. And I think what we're trying to do here is get you guys into real cost centers that we can analyze, because that's why you're going to have to do it when you actually do it. And so, right or wrong, this is the approach that we would recommend going with.
Yeah, and I would just say one more thing on that is, I guess our history, talking with John, Chris, being around and working with this site for many years, we know how it's operating. We know that we're optimizing, removing liquid from the gas wells, and we're optimizing collection, as best we can with current system operations. Tetra Tech coming in doesn't know everything and how we're operating the system. Also didn't have the budget to become experts on this site either. So some of those assumptions, stem from things like that.
Oh, that's what happens when you go with a low bid.
Okay.
So we narrowed down kind of on that landfill gas generation in collection. Actually, the collection rate is what we're interested here. So that's a section of the task order that's basically done. That's that slide there. Another thing that we need to look at was your current system. We want to compare the options that Tetra Tech presented, probably with, you know, a safety factor to line up with our conservative gas flow estimates. So that'll be part of it. But also, your system is aging. You have some equipment that's needing replacement. Right now it's oversized. As the gas curve has been dropping off, the equipment's getting older. Right now we're struggling with running the flare and the engines at the same time, which loses vacuum control on the hill in short periods of time when we're trying to operate both of those. So your flare in general is going to need to be replaced in the near future. So we've started to talk to vendors, try to get some cost estimates, and kind of get that ball rolling. Another part of the system is the compressor and treatment system at Sunnyview that compresses the gas and brings it up to temperature and pressure for the engines. So that compressor system is rather large and actually has to recycle some of the gas flow in order to get up to pressure because of the size. So we're spending some money spinning the gas in some circles. Part of the treatment system is altering the gas temperature, and our chiller unit is not fully functioning and hopefully can get us through this summer, but we'll need some replacement if we're continuing operating gas to energy engines. Oops, one more. So those are updates that just need to happen to the system. You know, the flare, no matter what, we need to, you know, update the flare, have capabilities to flare the gas. That's a permit DNR requirement. But what are we going to do with the gas? If we run the engines, we also need to update that gas compressor treatment system. We also looked into other options of if we continue to run the engine. One of these is kind of this optimization. So what does the cost look like if we have to spend, you know, this money to update the system and continue generating electricity at the WPS rates, plus whatever we will get from the credits after we evaluate that. Currently, we have engines at 2 different sites. We're sending gas from a different site to those different engines. So there are increased costs with permitting that gas pipeline between Sunnyview and Snell and the law enforcement center. There's also Clint's time as he's running between all the engines. So would it make any sense to move an engine closer to your landfill gas source, closer to Sunnyview, or compile all the engines, you know, at Snell? This is something we're just conceptually looking at, putting costs to what it would take to move the engines versus what you would save on your maintenance costs. Another point, if we're looking at moving any engines, we need to have a grid interconnect, and we have existing infrastructure for that at Snell and at the law enforcement center. So if we would think about placing an engine elsewhere, we also need to consider all the equipment needed. Another option is replacing an engine with a smaller engine. Right now, we have 3 functioning engines. 2 of them take mid 300s gas to run, mid 300 CFM of gas to run. So when we're only producing, you know, 600 SCFM or 700 SCFM, we can't necessarily run all of them at the same time. So just like we replaced engine 2 a couple years ago, does it make sense to have another smaller engine so we can run on smaller flows as our gas is declining? So these are just some baseline options that will be in that report and memo that we're working to finalize in August. But we wanted to intro them to you guys here, just so you know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And Sarah, let me just say one more thing here. Last week we had a Teams meeting, and Clint Byer, our mechanic or mechanical technician, participated in the meeting and provided his thoughts on some of these options. And the one thing that I guess he brought up that we, don't necessarily think of is, he's like, well, we have the shop, we have all the equipment for maintaining the engines over at Snell Road. So having to deal with an engine at the law enforcement center, anytime any major maintenance needs to be done on it, you're running back and forth. And he currently spends from anywhere from an hour to 2 hours a day driving back and forth between the site. So he's like, would it make sense to, if we're gonna relocate engines, would it make sense to put them all at Snell? And then I have a shop right adjacent to where 3 engines are. So I guess that's where that came into the equation, and that's based on our mechanic and optimizing his efficiency as far as maintaining this. So we're looking at it from a bunch of different angles, some of which might not pencil out, but that's what both is going to provide in their evaluation and report that they'll come back with in August. So. Any other questions? Is there any more slides, or you're at your last slide, Sarah?
Yep, I'm at the end here.
Okay.
I find it, go ahead. I find it ironic that we are spending a lot of money on lawyers, we're spending a lot of money on engineering, we spend a lot of money on Tetra Tech. Perhaps the best idea we had, we literally got for free from the guy that does the actual work on the equipment. And the gas flows are going down and down. I guess we have to do due diligence and find out. But by the time we buy another engine and pay the mechanic to keep them going and try to figure out, it almost looks like getting the point of no return is what I'm concerned with. I mean, I guess we gotta follow through and try to get more answers yet, but it makes me real nervous that pretty soon we're going to get to just flaring it and to heck with the whole.
Well, there's a cost. Yeah, there's a cost.
That's one of the options.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the options we're trying to cost out and look at.
That's what we always try to avoid.
Yeah, I don't mean to complicate things further, but I see quite a difference between what your model projects that we should be getting out of that landfill and what we're actually getting out of it. And I have to ask myself, is there something we can do to the landfill to get more usable gas out of it? And I know that adds another complication to it.
I will respond by saying the land gem model is an EPA published model that's used throughout the industry. It's a biological decay model. It isn't necessarily used good to predict actual gas generation or collection necessarily. I will also say that one thing that happens in this landfill that is there was some leachate recirculation done during operations and when you do that, you force decomposition to happen a little accelerated at that moment. And so, and I'm not saying that this is the reason why it's dropped off. I don't know all the answers for sure. But one idea would be that we caused produced more gas at the beginning and are going to have less gas produced now because we forced decomposition to happen at that point. And I don't know, do you have any thoughts on it, John?
Well, I think, yeah, there's something to that. I mean, recirculation that we did in the late 2000s and early through 2011, you know, helped us out at that time. But I think the other thing with this site is, and some of the veteran members will know this, but we used some horizontal collection wells in the landfill and drew a lot of gas out of the site earlier in the process than maybe a normal site. You know, maybe a normal site fills an area, caps an area, and then they put in a bunch of vertical wells. Well, we were installing horizontal wells, capturing gas sooner in the process. And I think that had some effect on the collection now, because I think we took some of the.
In our defense, we got paid dearly for
Yes.
the
Yes.
gas we were peddling back then.
This landfill also takes a lot of industrial waste from Bemis or whatever the current name of the company is, but there's a lot of plastic waste.
So, yeah, this deviation to post-closure is very typical with a subtitle decap, composite cap. It's a dry tomb. You shut down decomposition.
Yeah, so, you know, early gas collection, a lot of plastic waste is in the site. There's a lot of paper mill sludge in the site as well. And then as soon as that cap went on in 2013, you know, the liquids are kept out of the waste and the generation goes down. So I don't know that the curves are necessarily that uncommon from site to site to site. I mean, it was nice to see that we were up near the peak back before the site was capped, but yeah. So
yeah, I love models. They're great, but they're not real. I guess the main thing that I see that we use this model for is appropriately sizing a system. And you can see it kind of at the peak. Our actual and collected were pretty close. So that means our pipes were sized correctly to collect the gas that we thought we could generate. And that's a huge thing for the design and doesn't necessarily help for the generation curve on the end.
So, and we have tried different things since the cap went on to improve gas generation. We had some temporary pilot approvals to do leachate recirculation in a portion of the cap part of the site, but it turned out to be so labor intensive and didn't show enough value in producing any more gas that we terminated that. So, so we've tried to bring that curve a little closer to the model, but as Sarah said, there's so many variables in the model, and you can make that curve look however you want. So,
well, didn't we move to a larger generator? We went to a larger generator, which is pulling more gas.
Well, that one failed, Paul, right now. But when we went to engine 5, yeah, we picked a bigger unit that was using more gas, but that was in 2010 when we were on the upswing of the curve. So,
okay, well, we collected it then, so we're paying for it now.
Yeah, and again, this PPA term, I guess Cassie and I ran some projections, and again, the net revenue from our landfill gas cost center has added about $17 million to our retained earnings over the last 15 years. So it's been a good program for us.
Right, as opposed to flaring. Right.
So again, just to clarify, we are currently producing 10,000 megawatt hours a year.
Well, that is based on that generation or collection curve.
The real one.
The gray one, yeah. It's based on that one. And it's based on us not having catastrophic failure with an engine. So looking at the current 3 that we have, how we operate them with the gas flows, you know, barring any unforeseen
current circumstances.
So what we've come up with is about 10,000 megawatt hours per year, average for the next 5 to 6 years. That's what we feel like we can produce. So.
A lot of information. So, holy cow.
And
still a lot of questions.
Are we looking to approve 26-7 to
yes
finalize?
That's what I had wanted to do with this action item on number 9 is approve the additional funds for this scope of services, this tax order 9, $26,700 for full. Right.
So second, motion's been made and seconded to keep that 27-6, whatever.
26-7.
26-7. Any discussion, further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried.
Okay.
And for, I don't know if the board would agree with me, but if we have some sort of final meeting putting this all together, I would suggest that we just have that for an item on an agenda and just concentrate on that. Not that we have a lot of stuff, but I don't want to go back and forth.
We'll try to
keep
that agenda concise and focus on those decisions.
Great.
Okay. I guess I just have number 11 on with the director's report on department operations. Well, so probably the biggest bit of news. I mean, we keep running our transfer station, obviously, but we had a fire in the waste transfer station. I don't know if anyone heard about it, but it started sometime in the late hours of July 8th. And continued into the early morning hours of July 9th. So it started on a Friday night. The reason we found out about it is our fire suppression monitoring system tripped. And so we start getting calls that there's been a release at the transfer station fire suppression system, which also notifies the city of Oshkosh Fire Department. So fire department dispatch, our employees came to the site, and Cassie has a nice little video here to show what, I guess, the start of it.
So it started at 11:30 p.m. on Friday night. And then I'm just gonna have to pause this for a second.
So this is from one of the cameras on the south end of the waste portion of the transfer station. And as you can see, the fire is starting to develop. So as you can see with the light there, it's not like the transfer station was real full either. I think their guys have done a good job of trying to get as much out of there as possible. They were planning to haul a full day on Saturday too. But obviously this impacted.
Is this time lapse or just like real time?
No, this is real time.
This is how quickly it happened.
Yeah, so 11:30 and it's a 2-minute video.
So watch what
Fire
happens.
doubles itself every 30 seconds. It does. Thank you. Well, it should
Watch
also
carefully,
training
you know.
video.
Yeah, here's the exciting part.
Fireworks, see.
And then the fireworks started multiple small fires down the whole line of our waste. So we essentially had to take out all of the garbage to put the fire out.
Some of the leftovers from Winnie County.
We don't have leftovers. In there. We blow every day, rain or shine.
So then, as you can see, there is now a fire started right over here. And there's also a fire started over here from those fireworks.
Yeah. So I guess fortunately we have a well-designed fire suppression system because it did its job.
When did that start? How quickly after this did the fire suppression start?
I think at the
You
end
can
of
see
the
it
video,
now, like it's starting to smoke. I believe it turned on.
Oh, it turned on already?
Yeah.
Yeah. On this and
Yeah.
the north end.
So it kept it under enough control that by the time the city got here and our staff mobilized to the site, they worked together to basically go in and pull waste that's smoldering out, soak it down. It was I don't know if you want to run through those pictures, but
sure.
It was a big mess. It's a process. It's something that happened very similar to this happened 5 years ago in the waste side of the transfer station. So Oshkosh Fire, full response. Once the smoke cleared, once they were able to enter the building, they were in there with their hoses spraying waste down. Our loaders were going in there, pulling smoldering waste out, and then they were hosing it down. Basically, we ended up dragging most of the waste outside the building to get it all soaked down, put in roll-off boxes, big mess. Big mess.
The fireworks is like the worst case scenario possible.
If you look on this picture too, along this wall, you can see the multiple charred areas as it went down, and it kind of burned underneath down that back wall as well.
Yeah.
Is there any structural damage on it?
So the only thing that we need to still do is have an inspection done of the roof. That was a recommendation by the fire department. But we've had other fires in there, so I don't know if some of the charring was from a previous fire or this one. But fortunately, nobody was injured. The compactors worked, the cameras worked through the fire. All the overhead doors worked. There was a few light fixtures that got melted that will need to be replaced. And then obviously the fire suppression system, the sprinkler heads a number had to be replaced. So yeah, I guess.
Know what launched the fire?
No. And the fire department wasn't willing to provide any kind of.
Obviously, you've got all these boxes of fireworks that had been discarded, and I'll blame it all on every stand is selling some very significant stuff now. It comes all pre-boxed, and obviously half of it went off. I would certainly suspect that there was still some smoldering paper or whatever in that box to start the cardboard going, which eventually ignited the rest.
Yeah, we tried to look back at the video from the end of the day on Friday.
Yeah.
There were two loads that came in. One was was in a compactor box, and then one was one of our roll-off boxes from all back here.
Two roll-off.
So it was really hard to tell.
And it gets pushed up and pushed in, so it's can't really.
Well, when you think of what could, that could have not ignited here, that could have been transported up to Outagamie's landfill and whatever and buried them, you'd have been, you'd been mining that place.
Middle of the night mining.
Figure it out.
So based on that, I can't recall, do we give people instructions as to how to dispose of their fireworks? I don't remember
instructions on how to shoot them.
Right.
Well, Kathy put together a post on Saturday on Facebook with pictures of the aftermath here and reminding everyone, please don't put your fireworks, your charcoal, ashes, any burning material in your waste, because this is what happens when you get here. So
It's kind of, is that out on, it's kind of a cool video. Whether you like it or not. And the fireworks in there, is that out there on Facebook or?
That video is not on Facebook as of now.
I believe that video should be released to show why you have to. I just think that's going to draw more people to our site than anything you've posted so far. That makes me a bad guy. I'm just.
No, that was one of our most popular posts. People were commenting and sharing.
I gotta believe that would make the rounds very quick and be an educational tool.
Okay.
Probably that's about an hour into our next.
Probably Oshkosh Fire pipeline there. See that video, they can probably use that video in some instructional matter. Yes.
Just real quick, it also is impressive as far as the fire suppression and so on and so forth. So it's to me impressive as a consumer-minded person that, wow, that was, I could see it being suppressed and was minimized the damage.
Yeah, I guess what's not really seen in pictures is all the work. I mean, from, I don't know, 1 in the morning until.
Yeah, Kathy and
not.
2 of our equipment operators got here between 12 and 12:30. I arrived about 1 o'clock and we did not get out of here until afternoon the next day.
So there was a lot of work behind the scenes.
Yeah,
to
calling out to all of our haulers because we had to close our transport station completely because there was debris spread all out throughout that driving area in the lot. And getting them loaded into containers that were still smoldering to separate it from other ones so they had time to burn out before we loaded it into trailers. And just doing the whole cleanup process. We had to pump excess water out because of the sprinkler systems. And our pits were filled where the trucks would typically back in, just re-coordinating those efforts to move material.
So I guess what I intend to do is work with HR and provide some sort of employee commendation for the staff that's reported and assisted and helped coordinate everything. So I'm working with Mark Hovick and HR to have something put in their files for that extra effort that they went through to make sure that we were ready to be back operational on Monday morning. So. I guess we talked about gas energy operations ad nauseum, so I won't get into that too much. Again, we're trying to run 3 when we can, and when we don't have enough gas, we run 2 and try to maximize power generation during the peak hours. WPS revenues. Yeah, the revenues for June ended up being pretty good. We had 76,693 from engines 2R and engine 3 at the Snell Road site, and we had 40,290 from engine 4, and again, engine 5 is not operational. No landfill gas usage at highway, so we had 116,983. For the year, 6 months today, we're at 689,670. We are obviously not going to hit our budgeted target revenue of 1,520,000. If we can continue with our operations, kind of rotating through 3 engines, 2 engines, maximizing peak, we're hopeful we can continue to see about $100,000 in revenue a month. Which should put us somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.2 is what we're hoping for if everything stays together. Clint, the one-man show is doing the best he can when he's off on vacation. We just flare over the weekend, which is off peak anyways, so it's not that big of a deal. So, yeah, and we had our annual closed site DNR landfill inspections. So we had DNR staff on site on June 23rd. They spent an afternoon here reviewing the Sunnyview site, co-disposal, the sludge site, as well as over at Snell Road, and we got basically clean reports from both locations. They do that annually. The only comments were, try to keep up with the vegetative cover over at Snell Road. We have some areas that struggle with the grass growth, probably due to the cover thickness and composition. We also did some mowing over there, and with new staff, we got into areas where it was a little wet, so we tore up a few areas. So we got a little bit of repair work to do over there, but she and our staff was happy with the way things looked there as well. So
that's the first.
Yes, I think our inspector is mellowing a little bit with
age.
With age.
Yep.
Well, there's a little trust.
Yeah,
that's the bell.
Yeah. I think the first time she was on site, it was like if you saw a spot of grass that was the size of one of these tables where it was dead or not growing that well, she was writing that down. But I think she's mellowed it a little bit and realizing that we got 110 acres of cover there in the old landfill. There's bound to be some areas where.
Don't they have the drone to do all that? Or they physically walk that?
We drove around and walked. Yeah. Yeah. And Mitchell, I took Mitchell Bush, who's our environmental tech. He came with us on the inspection. He had one tick, I had 0 ticks, and I didn't hear if other people had any ticks. When we were walking through grass, it was about so, anyways, that's all I had to report on operation.
Anything else from any of the board members? Stop. We need to entertain a motion to adjourn. Next meeting. Next meeting is
the workshop. So the budget workshop on August 3rd. So
you had to ask that. It was
yeah, we're right in the middle of making our entries in financial software. We're gonna have a little internal meeting tomorrow, and then hopefully next week, I'm shooting for Wednesday. To get our packets together and out to the board members, and then we'll talk about them on the 3rd. So.
At 9.
At 9 o'clock.
okay. So you're going to send information out to us before.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
3-hour meeting.
yeah.
Sometimes 5 or 6.
No.
If it looks like it's gonna go beyond that, maybe we'll have a little lunch or something or whatever. Sometimes we'll order in pizzas from that guy on the road.
Bring it back.
We'll get it from printers. All in favor of the motion? Second. Aye. There it is. 2 ayes. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried.
Had to wait till we were.